I'm James Rule. Welcome to the Lonely Leader podcast, where we help existing and aspiring leaders find clarity, build resilience, drive performance, and enhance fulfillment. Today, we're talking about the latest trait in our Leadership Essentials series, and that is humility. Before I jump into that trait, just a quick recap on the Leadership Essentials series, what it is, why I'm drawing upon it. It's my belief that the Leadership Essentials that I profile in this series are essential for every leader. It's something that we should all incorporate into our leadership style. They're drawn from my own personal experiences as a chief executive, but also from the experiences of coaching, mentoring, and training a variety of leaders in different roles and sectors around the world. As with any series, you'll listen to some elements and think, yep, I do that. But I hope that there'll be some that you think, I could probably incorporate a little bit more of that. So the whole focus is about reflection, encouraging you to listen to some of the anecdotes that I utilize and reflect on, are you bringing enough of this trait to your leadership style? Because every leader wants to be able to lead with impact. They want to be able to engage, inspire, and connect with their stakeholders. And in order to do that, I believe these traits are fundamental. So let's have a little bit of a look at humility. And one of the great quotes that I've heard that helps frame this is that leaders should be willing to do anything, but not do everything. So let's look at the first half of that quote. I think as a leader, we have to be willing to look at everything going on in our organization and say, when I'm needed, when the pressure is really on, when my team are overwhelmed, whatever the particular trigger, I need to be willing to step forward, to roll up my proverbial sleeves and get involved. And I think that is essential as a foundational thought process when we consider humility. No job is beneath you. It's very easy to think, oh, I've made it. Now I'm at the top of the hierarchy. Now I'm the leader. Now I'm the boss. I don't need to do that. And to a degree, that may be true. But in order to truly inspire and connect with your team, they need to see that you are willing to do anything. Now, the second half of that quote says, but not do everything. And I think that is a slight drift into a previously featured leadership essential, delegation, which you can find a link to in the show notes of this episode. Now, you can't do anything and everything all of the time. That's when you self-combust. That's when leaders put themselves at risk of burnout. So what I'm talking about here is, yes, you must be willing to do anything, but there are moments in time. You can't physically do every role in the organization all of the time. We have to step in when we're needed, but then be able to step out and delegate effectively. So coming back to that point of willing to do anything, one of the nicest examples I've seen to frame this came from the book Legacy, which is a feature on the New Zealand All Blacks, one of the most successful sporting organizations in history. What I love about the All Blacks is their ability, even though the personnel changes, to consistently perform at the highest standard. So you can't just say, hey, they had a moment in time where they had a really good group of players and they were successful. No, players grow, retire, leave that organization, new players come through, and yet they still maintain this freakishly good winning percentage. And a big part of that, I believe, is the culture, and a lot of the traits that we feature in the Leadership Essentials series are displayed consistently by the leaders within that culture. So the Legacy book is a good book by James Kerr. I'd recommend it. And there's a link in the show notes to another one of the Lonely Leader podcast episodes where I profile some of my most impactful leadership books, and Legacy is one of them. And within that book, there is an articulation of what the New Zealand All Blacks call sweeping the sheds. The sheds is their colloquialism, their reference to the changing rooms, the dressing rooms, where the teams prepare pre and post match. Now, after a match, as you can imagine, the dressing rooms are a chaotic scene. You've got all the mud and strapping and detritus from a match day, and that ends up all over the floor. And it'd be very easy for the sports team to change into their clothes, their post-match attire, and just walk out of that dressing room and leave it in a relative state of chaos for the cleaners to arrive and tidy up. And what I love about the All Blacks is they have this sweeping the sheds mentality where they bring a bin into the dressing room, they bring a sweeping brush into the dressing room, and they take pride in cleaning everything up so that when the cleaners arrive, there's very little left to do. And that is a representation of their brand and how they want to be perceived as a humble and grounded, down to earth group. And what's also powerful within this is you think, well, yeah, that makes sense. And I imagine it's the youngest, most junior players who do that. And it's quite the opposite. It's a role taken on by a whole variety of people within the team, but frequently it is some of the most senior individuals, the team captain, players that have played over 100 times for their country, the players that the media are waiting for, the supporters and the fan base are waiting for to emerge from the dressing rooms. They are still taking the time to sweep away the debris, to pick up the mud, to pick up the strappings, to pick up the tape, etc., and put that into the bin. And I think that is a wonderful articulation of being willing to do anything. And that standard then ripples through the organization because the junior players coming into that organization see the senior players acting with that level of humility and being willing to do anything. And therefore, they pick up the baton and they continue that. Just to build on that theme of sweeping the sheds, a few years ago now in a football World Cup, the Japanese football team rightly received a wide-ranging amount of media coverage for the impeccable standard that they left their dressing room in post-match. And that very similar to the New Zealand All Blacks. And then it went up another notch because the Japanese supporters were actively cleaning their section of the stadium post-match. So there were images that you may have seen of Japanese supporters with bin bags in hand, picking up rubbish and debris from their section of the stand. And anybody who saw that or read about that can't fail to be impressed and see that as a wonderful gesture of humility. So within this, I want you to reflect on where can you bring humility, both in your actions and your words. And it's very easy, and I'm not dismissing this side of the equation. It is easier to be humble in your words, but what really connects with your staff and your people is the willingness to be humble in your actions. And that could be a multitude of things. You know, I remember at one point in my leadership journey as a chief executive, there was a little bit of a rumbling of discontent within one of the open plan office areas of the facility. And whilst cleaners would come in on an evening, there was almost a slightly chauvinistic expectation that some of the ladies in the office would keep the place in good order. They would be sweeping through people's desks, picking up, cups, etc., putting them in the dishwasher, making sure the bins were emptied, etc., etc. And that was fundamentally wrong. It was nobody's individual job. We all enjoyed that environment, that office space, and it was breeding discontent. So it might sound a very trivial example, but we created a little mini cleaning rota where one day in 40, you had an additional responsibility for staying on top of the office environment. And on day one, I made sure I included myself in that. And it wasn't a huge amount of time, maybe 15 or 20 minutes, just to show that, hey, we're in this together. We're a team. We all have to have the humility to keep on top of our working environment. And that had the added bonus of a little bit of fun, a little bit of banter within the staff. But more importantly, it showed that nobody was bigger than the team. We all had to be willing to roll up our sleeves, and it wasn't right to expect a few of the ladies in the office to stay on top of it. Now, that might sound a very simplistic example, but it's often the most simple gestures that have the biggest impact. So I hope you've enjoyed listening to this. I encourage you to reflect on your day-to-day interactions with your colleagues, how you lead them, whether you are a senior leader or not. We all have the ability through our words and actions to show humility, to inspire those around us, and to really inject some value into the culture of your organization. Some of the highest performing environments I've been in, both in sport and business, are epitomized by the humility shown from the leadership down through the entire organization. Thanks for listening to the Lonely Leader podcast. I'd be very grateful if you could share and follow if the content resonates. And if you're looking for additional free resource to support your continued growth and development, then please do check out our social media and website details in the show notes. Remember, quality leadership on the outside must always start within.